What would be your advice to young surgeons these days?
I have a lecture that I've given several times in different locations about almost exactly that title, Advice to Young Surgeons. And a lot of it has to do with specific aspects of vascular practice primarily, but in closing of those comments, I advise first attention to the family, because it's vascular surgery is a all-consuming profession, and you can get too locked into it. In fact, Art Voorhees told me as I was leaving the residency program there to spend as much time as I could with my family, because he said he'd never heard of a vascular surgeon who on his deathbed said, "I wish I'd done more aneurysms."
That's good.
So I think that's important advice to any practitioner, but especially to surgeons. The second, and maybe equally important, is personal integrity. I think that that's paramount to success in any profession, but certainly in medicine, where we're dedicated to serving our patients and doing everything motivated by their welfare. And then there are other attributes that surgeons need, like perseverance and dedication to the specialty, and patience when things aren't going well. I sometimes tell my colleagues that they need to offer the surgeon's prayer, which to me is, "God, if you'll just get me out of this time, I'll never do this again."
Our last question, we'd like your advice to young vascular surgeons.
I have enjoyed everything I've done very much. I was allowed to follow my star. I would have liked to have done many things. What I did do was the right thing to do. I've enjoyed every minute, and I've been paid for it whilst I was doing it. I've been elated and had the warmth from the very gratified patients, my medical students and the trainees. A feeling of warmth that goes with what I've done is very special, and that's what happened to me. But what I would like the next generation to have is exactly the same warmth wherever they find it, not necessarily in vascular surgery, but to do what it seems that they would love to do. And then if you're paid for doing what you love to do, and it won't seem like work, you put in the extra hours, you'll have the enthusiasm. That's what happened to me. I would not say to my children, "You must do vascular surgery." I would say to my children, be as happy as I've been, and vascular surgery is what I did. In the next generation it might be quite different. Be paid for doing what you enjoy.
So what do you think, I mean, this is a kind of grandiose question, but what do you think the single most important element is to innovation?
Well, stick with it. You're going to be discouraged by many
So perseverance.
people. Perseverance. You got to stick with it.
Yeah, that's important. Now, what about your ability or anybody's ability to spot technology that might actually work? How do you do that?
You know, I often give stupid answers. You just do it. It's really not a stupid answer. And people go off and say, "Well, how did you get started?" You just start. That's how you get started. Now, you may not start the right way, but by getting started, you'll get a better concept of what is the right way.
And I would say listening to you earlier, just paying attention, sounds like that is important in your career. Paying attention to what's going on around you.
Yes. You know, I think a lot of surgeons, I know they're really good surgeons, they have a total awareness, and yet they're able to focus. And I think that is a gift. And it's very important, though.
What parting advice would you give to young surgeons?
Patient-centric. We got to keep thinking that our obligation is to the patient. It's not, our obligation is not to the institution. It's not to the government. And I think we've lost that concept along the way. And that concept has been encouraged by some people that shouldn't be doing it. It's not thinking about what grant you're going to get next. It's not thinking about what award you're going to get next. So I think we have to really focus on we're here to take care of patients and other things come second.
What advice would you give to young people who are in training now and who are considering pursuing careers in surgery?
Well, the number one advice is to remember that it's a real privilege to be a surgeon. Not everybody gets that opportunity. You have to earn it. You have to keep earning it every day. And you earn it through your commitment to patients. And while keeping that foremost, for those who have academic interests, I think to try to integrate your academic interests with your clinical interests.
Let me ask you one last question, Larry. What advice do you have for young vascular surgeons?
If you're going to be doing vascular surgery, do what excites you and do what keeps you interested. Never be afraid of taking a challenge. I mean, several of the things that I did in my career were never planned, but it was an opportunity that came up, and it was, is it going to be fun to do? Is it something I'd really like to do? If the answer is yes, and it's the right thing, then hopefully you'll have a wife who will support you as mine did, and you do what you find is enjoyable in life.
What's your advice, now that we're coming to the conclusion of our interview, to young aspiring either medical students, residents, and even young vascular surgeons?
I'd say if you like pipes, and I try to tell all the residents and students that pipes are much more than the heart. It's just a pump. What goes in, it gets pumped out. That's what old Professor Starling taught us. But it's the pipes, going all the way back to William Harvey, that really, really are the important part of the circuit that really do everything. And as a vascular surgeon, you get to work with those pipes, fix them, understand the diseases, and the field is extraordinary. I'd go into it again today if I had to start over, because you can not only be a surgeon with a huge toolbox, open, endo, diagnostic, all is in that toolbox, and it's incredible to be able to do all aspects of your specialty. And I think that's rather fun. And also, on the science side, there are hugely challenging problems to solve. And again, the toolbox is large and full. So I'd encourage anyone who has an interest in plumbing, that is red plumbing, to really look at the specialty, because I think it's really interesting.
What advice do you have for young surgeons now?
Learn how to operate. Learn how to operate.
If you had to give advice to young surgeons, young vascular surgeons coming up today, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that they have an extremely exciting future ahead, and that the opportunity for them to be innovative and to contribute has never been better. The reason I say this too, we as a medical school are undergoing what's known as curriculum reform. And of course, all medical schools have either gone through this or they're going through it. We've been forewarned you can make it worse, and we may make it worse. But one of the good things that's coming out of this is what has been termed Capstone Projects. Well, what this means is that our first-year medical students are challenged to find a mentor, to find a project, and to work on it in their free time, and then they get 3 months at the end of their fourth year to finalize this project. So I'm very excited about being the mentor at this moment to 3 second-year medical students in this area. And let me just give one as an example. a second-year medical student who's a Stanford undergraduate. She was in ROTC when Stanford didn't have an ROTC. She went down to Santa Clara in San Jose to do her ROTC. Her father was Vietnamese, her mother was Cantonese, Chinese, and she's just a wonderful human being. She is helping me with the Vietnam Vascular Registry. She has the project to determine what improvements can be made in managing popliteal vascular injuries.
Wow.
And the reason we're focusing on this, as we know, in the civilian sector as well as the military sector today, amputations after popliteal arterial trauma are still at about 30%.
Right.
And we know that there continues to be a great deal of interest over the repair of the popliteal vein, because if there's no return conduit, there can be acute venous hypertension and the amputation can be required even with a functioning arterial graft.
Right.
So this again is the excitement that I'm caught up in. And you know as well as I do that if the mentor is enthusiastic and caught up in this, the mentee or the students coming along show the same interest. And I have a few others with similar type projects. So I just think it's an exciting time and a wonderful opportunity to still be able to be involved.
Ken, in parting, do you have advice for young surgeons?
I have advice for all surgeons, and that is the volume of medical knowledge doubles every 7 years, now probably every 5 years. And now with technological changes in the microchip and new products and new suturing techniques, we have tools, and the future has tools that we never had. When you started in vascular, you had vascular silk, which was waxed, but it still fractured very early. And then came polyethylene and ultimately polypropylene. And polypropylene made a tremendous difference, as well as the graft materials. So the advice I have to all of us, particularly young people, never be satisfied with what you have. Always figure out a better way. Always question your elders about the dogma they tell you is the only way to do a thing, and leave the world better than you found it by building on the successes of the past and figuring out new ways to do new things, but base it on science, base it on need, and never lose your humanity and the reason you exist.
What is your advice to young surgeons?
Well, my advice to young surgeons, if you really want to be a surgeon, you better like what you're doing. It's hard work. Yeah, it's hard work, but it's very satisfying. I've had a very satisfied life. I wouldn't do anything else ever if I had to do it over again. Do exactly what I've done.
What advice would you give to aspiring surgeons?
You have to be really good. Get trained so that you're an excellent, excellent surgeon, not only technically but emotionally, making sure you have good emotional intelligence, situational awareness. Just be really, really good and spend as much time as you need to get good. And some areas are going to come easy, some are not. Reassess all the time. Are you happy doing what you are doing? And if you're not, adjust. Find something else to do, because your life is not forever, and you might as well be going to work with a smile on your face and enjoying it every day. And whether it's less work, more work, different work, find something that really gives you joy to have that happen. And also realize these jobs and things are not myths. You can do any of this. You can go in and make a difference in anything you do, whether it's chief of staff at your hospital, running a research lab, having the best vein center in a town. You can do all of that really well, and you can make a difference doing that. And people will remember you because of your kindness and your ability to share. So I think that realizing we are so fortunate to be able to do this for a living, and that we are lucky to be healthy enough to continue to do it for a long time, and lucky us.
Is there any separate advice you would give to women who want to pursue surgery, or is it the same?
I think it's the same advice, but I said that. But don't be worried if you feel inadequate, challenged, or overwhelmed. Because the one thing, there's a new book that just came out showing that men feel that too, but it doesn't bother them. So that when men feel overwhelmed and absolutely devastated, they just go, oh, well, let's keep going. Where women actually pause more. And I actually think we're going to find that in this study, is that, and maybe it's the way we're raised or how we look at ourselves. Men will apply for jobs they're not qualified for and wonder why you didn't hire them. Women will wait till you fulfill 100% of the boxes before they apply. So I think we can learn a lot from each other, not that you should apply for things you're not qualified for, but I think women need to realize that feeling of stress, strain, inadequacy, we all feel. Every time you go in for a ruptured aneurysm, we all have that feeling, oh my God, and that's okay. You're going to do fine and move on with that. And there is literature out there showing in all fields that that feeling is good. Your patient wants you to feel stressed and overwhelmed and worried that you can't do this. And that's what you need to know, that everyone's feeling that way. And it's okay to talk about it.
Do you have any advice for young people today? You've already emphasized that the young people are our future.
You know, John Wayne said something. He was asked about what is courage. And courage is a lot of things, and you can define it in many ways. Basically, he said, well, you get this situation and you know it's rough and it's going to be rougher, and what do? You saddle up and you ride out. And I think that you do that most of the time, and most of the time, I think, you're surprised that at the end you're still alive and everything's okay, because it just works out that way. I'd do it all over again. I'd go back to medical school tomorrow, and I'd be a much better doctor.
I wanted to ask your opinion about the training of future surgeons, particularly related to the open techniques, that, as we know, are probably harder than some of the other techniques. And with the laparoscopic surgery and endovascular surgery, how are we going to train people to be good open surgeons?
It's I think, a huge problem for the future. Vascular surgery was a fun time in my life. I can't say that I had an unhappy day. I had unhappy moments, but not unhappy days. And I used to, on the lecture circuit, talk about the fact that vascular surgery will never go away, because we have McDonald's and Hardee's and all those people who keep serving our children fatty fast foods. But the reality of training vascular surgeons, I was involved back when Bob Barnes pushed hard for changing the vascular fellowship program and making it part of the general surgery training, where you could opt out after several years and do either thoracic or vascular as an emphasis. As I talk to my friends, I think vascular surgery's future is in some jeopardy. Not only are we going to have trouble training the young surgeons to do open surgery, we're going to have to train them to do the endovascular work, which is the primary way vascular disease is treated today. But we also have the issue of vascular surgery is difficult, intense, and time-consuming. And you're not rewarded in that fashion in today's environment. And we're seeing now that the young people, if in the surveys, they don't want to go into vascular surgery. It's too time-consuming. They're not reimbursed strongly enough. And it means that what we're turning out is a different product than we had before. So I think there's great jeopardy, but the jeopardy is also on the general surgery side. As I talked to LD Britt, they have the same issues in general surgery. Most everything is being done with scopes. And yet there are times when you have to be able to go in and do the open work, which those of us who are a little bit senior, that was our bread and butter. So I think there's great jeopardy. It's going to take very thoughtful consideration by the senior leaders to see what are we going to do with the vascular fellowship programs and the training of people to do vascular surgery.
George, do you have any advice for young surgeons coming along today?
Well, you know, one of the things that's happening is that there are changing methods of treatment in the fields of surgery, so that what we learned 50 years ago or 40 years ago is becoming obsolete. And so they've got to see how that's going to affect their practice. So for example, for aneurysms, to treatment aneurysm surgically, only the surgeon could do it. When you go with the endovascular, the surgeons can do it, the radiologists do it, the cardiologists do it, and so it's divided up so that your total experience is going to be diminished because there's so many people that are involved in doing those types of surgery or treatments.
So your advice is to?
My advice is look at and see what's happening in the field and decide whether there's going to be enough for you to do when you finish up your training with what you're learning how to do.
If young surgeons came to you that had been trained in vascular surgery for advice, what would you tell them?
I think we have a great future. The technology is going to get better. Things you're going to be fine. Just have to work hard and shut up and do it.